Coming up today, Korea's rival political parties failed to pass a pension reform bill for public service employees aimed at reducing a massive funding deficit. Scores of international historians are urging Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to confront his country's past wrongdoings after he failed to acknowledge Japan's wartime sex slavery during a recent trip to the United States. Plus, President Park Geun-hye vows to plug ahead with her deregulation drive, calling it the key to revitalizing the sluggish domestic economy. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, May 7th here in Seoul. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. And we begin with the latest on Korea's pension reform efforts. Despite earlier agreements, the rival parties failed to pass a bill overhauling the civil servant pension system on Wednesday, the last day of the Assembly's extraordinary session. Just last weekend, it looked like the ruling Saenuri Party and the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy were united on reforms that would require public service employees to pay higher premiums while working and receive reduced payouts during retirement. However, the main opposition was expecting the vote to include a bill to reform the national pension system, a separate government-run pension scheme for the general public. Ultimately, opposition party lawmakers refused to vote, blaming the ruling party for changing the terms to exclude those national pension reforms. Korea plans to hold talks with Japan as part of efforts to thwart Tokyo's bid to list several wartime industrial facilities as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. An official at Seoul's Foreign Ministry says the meeting will take place this month, although an exact date has not been fixed yet. This comes after the International Council on Monuments and Sites reportedly approved 23 industrial zones in Japan as possible UNESCO sites. Those include 7 facilities where some 58,000 Koreans were forced into hard labor during the Japanese colonial era. Tokyo-based broadcaster TV Asahi reported this week that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is sending handwritten appeals to UNESCO member countries in an effort to make sure the sites are listed. The 21-member World Heritage Committee will make a final decision at the end of June. And the Korean government plans to register records of the so-called comfort women to UNESCO World Heritage with other victimized countries whose women and girls were forced into sexual slavery for Japanese soldiers before and during World War II. Korea's Ministry of Gender Equality says it will launch an international promotion committee with countries including China, Taiwan, the Netherlands and the Philippines at the end of the month to prepare for the move. Seoul plans to emphasize that the issue was wartime sexual violence that affected many countries in the region. The Korean government is expected to submit the application to UNESCO by the end of March next year. And as the Japanese government pushes its own distorted version of history, nearly 200 scholars from around the world have released a joint statement to urge Tokyo to face up to its wartime atrocities. They say the Abe administration's attempts to whitewash history will only draw more international attention to the issue. Hwang Sang-hee reports.
187 international historians are calling on Japan to apologize for its wartime sexual enslavement of women. In a joint statement on Wednesday, the scholars said it's simply unacceptable for Japan to deny or trivialize its actions. More than 200,000 women, mostly Korean, were forced to serve the Japanese military during Japan's colonial rule of Korea in the mid-1900s. Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been facing heavy criticism for backtracking on Tokyo's past apologies to the victims, denying the government's involvement in the recruitment of the women. Just a week ago, Abe ignored calls from the international community and refused to apologize to the so-called comfort women in his U.S. Congress address. In his attempts to whitewash history, Abe has relied in part on a lack of concrete evidence. The scholars pointed out that important evidence also comes from the testimony of victims. Wednesday's joint appeal follows a similar statement issued by 20 U.S. scholars in February. Professor Alexis Dedden from University of Connecticut, who led the move, noted in an earlier interview that such denials will raise more international awareness about the issue.
Right? It's not going to silence people either inside Japan or anywhere in the world, because that's not how questioning, thinking, research works. Everybody's going to want to know more.
With the statement also sent to the Japanese leader, the focus now is on whether Abe will offer anything more in his statement on the 70th anniversary of the war's end. But most doubt he will have a change of heart by August. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
And it's not just historians. A senior Chinese political leader is also pressuring the Japanese Prime Minister to face his country's past wrongdoings. Japan's Kyodo News Agency reports that China's top legislator, Zhang Dojang, has told a group of Japanese lawmakers that Abe's August speech marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II should be acceptable to China and the global community as a whole. The news agency says the official statement suggests that Abe should include an apology in his speech. Now, in his address to the US Congress last month, Abe acknowledged Japan had caused suffering in the region, but he chose not to offer a new apology to the 200,000 women forced into sexual slavery. Activists from a South Korean civic group will continue talks with their counterparts from North Korea on this Thursday to discuss plans to co-organize an event commemorating the 15th anniversary of the June 15th Joint Declaration. Seoul's Committee for the Joint Celebration, which has been meeting with delegates from Pyongyang since Tuesday in the Chinese city of Shenyang, decided to extend the talks for one more day to iron out some unresolved issues regarding the event. The delegations are known to have generally agreed on restoring national identity and contributing to the development of inter-Korean relations by holding diverse, non-political events. Now, it's the first time in 5 years that the South Korean government has given permission for the two committees to discuss a plan to mark the historic declaration. North Korea's nominal head of state, Kim Jong-nam, will travel to Moscow on Friday for a two-day trip that will see him represent the North at Victory Day celebrations in Moscow on Saturday. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un was initially expected to attend the ceremony, but Russian authorities said they were told last week that he would not be making the trip. The news of Kim Jong-nam's travel plans was announced by Russia's Sputnik news agency on Wednesday. No word yet on who he plans to meet during his time in Moscow, but plenty of world leaders, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, will be present. A preliminary report by French investigators has found that the co-pilot of a Germanwings flight that was brought down in the French Alps in March had practiced the fatal descent maneuver on the outbound flight from Düsseldorf to Barcelona. 150 people died when Andreas Lubitz crashed the plane on its return journey. The report also says the 27-year-old ignored more than a dozen attempts to contact him from both ground and air before putting the jet on a crash course with the side of a mountain. Lubitz, who had suffered severe depression, is also known to have researched ways to commit suicide in the days leading up to the incident. Back here in Korea, and President Park Geun-hye led a ministers' meeting on her deregulation drive, the third of its kind, on Wednesday. She called for increased efforts to strip away excessive regulations, a key component of her economic policy. Our Chae-sun has more.
President Park Geun-hye says the government is planning to focus on ensuring the public and businesses are satisfied with her deregulation drive.
우리가 규제에 묶여 있는 동안 다른 경쟁국들은 발빠르게 움직이고 있습니다. 이제 우리도 경제 회복과 청년 일자리 창출을 위해서 보다 과감한 규제 개혁에 나서야 하겠습니다.
The president took note of efforts to address the most pressing deregulatory tasks and better gauge the public's concerns. However, she also urged officials to tailor the proposed reforms to more effectively benefit the related parties and said Korea's regulatory system should be revised to meet global standards. She added that while alternatives to regulation should be considered, new regulations need to maximize the private sector's autonomy. This year, the government announced a series of new reform measures. For the first time in more than 40 years, the government will ease regulations on greenbelt management initially implemented to prevent urban overpopulation and to preserve the environment. The Land Ministry says it will allow the construction of facilities to manufacture and sell indigenous products on greenbelts to boost the income of area residents. Restrictions on restaurant and housing construction will also be eased. Officials say the deregulatory actions will focus on reducing inconveniences for residents while striking a balance between development and preserving the environment. In a move to catch up with advanced countries like the US and Japan, the Korean government will adjust regulations to permit test drives of driverless cars with the goal of commercializing them by 2020. The government also plans to offer greater support in the areas of infrastructure and technological development. 최유선, 아리랑 뉴스.
And economy-related ministries announced their plans to lift regulations on Wednesday as well. They are seeking to foster growth engines through foreign investment. Our Song Ji-son has the details.
Korea is gaining recognition as an attractive investment destination. But even as more investors acknowledge Korea's importance, they also say there is plenty of room for improvement. According to a survey by the Korean Chamber of Commerce, more than half of the foreign investors surveyed said Korea has increased in significance, especially after it agreed on a free trade pact with China. However, they also said the investment environment is not any more favorable than before. That is why Seoul is working to remove regulations and open doors to more investment. With the new deregulation package, Seoul is seeking to attract $30 billion in investment by 2017, a marked increase from the $19 billion record set last year. Starting next month, and for the first 2 years since their founding in Korea, companies with foreign investment will no longer have to limit the number of foreign employees to less than 20% of the workforce. In addition, foreign startups seeking to register a business will soon face less paperwork. The lifting of other regulations will give foreign companies opportunities to develop medical cosmetics and own airport maintenance services. In addition to easing regulations for foreign investors, the government will work toward fostering new growth engines on the domestic front by supporting the convergence of industries like healthcare and financial technologies. As a first step, the related ministries will help startups expedite the process of turning their ideas into products. The latest set of deregulation moves is aimed at improving efficiency and creating a greater synergy effect among government ministries and agencies. To do that, the government plans to remove redundant processes and emphasize collaboration. 송지선, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, the average Korean worker is bringing home wages that are well above the OECD average, and the after-tax amount puts Korea even higher in the group, meaning the tax burden in Korea is not as heavy as in other member countries. According to the OECD's latest taxing wages report, Korea had the 14th highest annual income before taxes last year at $46,664. This among the 34 member nations. That's well above the OECD average of $41,000. Korea fell behind Japan and Sweden. Switzerland topped the list with over $66,000, followed by Luxembourg and Norway. Koreans' annual income after taxes is just over $40,000, bumping it to 6th place in the rankings, behind Australia and the Netherlands. Korean shipbuilders retain their top spot for 3 straight months. Winning the largest amount of new orders last month certainly did help that as well. According to London-based Clarkson Research Services, during the month of April, Korean shipbuilders won orders totaling 533,000 compensated gross tons, which is a widely used indicator to measure the amount of work necessary to build a ship. The Korean shipbuilders were followed by shipbuilders from China and Japan by a wide margin during the same period. In particular, shipbuilders from China won less than 300,000 compensated gross tons in orders last month, and that is their lowest monthly output in 6 years. Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broome. Have a wonderful day and thank you for watching, and we hope to see you at the same time on Friday morning. Goodbye.